Welcome back to Director's Choice. Sometimes in life, there are moments when life is not all that it seems. Moments where the true reality of our lives is too much to bear. And out of desperation, we create an alternate reality in our heads that helps us cope with the pain of our true existence. We imagine scenarios of what might have happened or could happen and get lost in the what-ifs of our imaginations. This happens to all of us at some point in our lives as we navigate the ups and downs of life.
Coral?
At some point, though, we all have to come to terms with our reality and accept it for what it is. That's exactly what happens in Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo is a classic Disney Pixar movie that has been loved for years by kids and adults alike. At first glance, it is just another animated family film that discusses the family bonds and the sacrifices a parent will make for their children. However, Disney does not shy away from embedding serious adult messages in otherwise kid-friendly movies, like in their other movies Up and Inside Out. Finding Nemo is no exception. When you look past the child-friendly surface of the film, where the aquatic animals can talk and vegetarian sharks can befriend fish, there is a much deeper, darker, and more meaningful lesson to the film than you may at first realize. To understand that meaning, you have to realize that the twist in Finding Nemo is the realization that Nemo doesn't actually exist. The movie is actually following Marlin's personal journey to recover from the sudden loss of his entire family, and how the people and adventures he encounters change his perspective on life after his loss. All the events pertaining to Nemo in this movie are part of a delusion that traumatized Marlin has created to cope with reality. The first clue is Nemo's name itself. In Latin, the word Nemo means nobody. The use of the name in this film was a reference to the book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, which has a character who calls himself Captain Nemo to remain anonymous and secluded from civilization. This reference, utilized in the title itself and as the name of one of the most important characters, is the first hint that not all is what it seems in the movie, that, on the surface, appears to be about family bonds and what a father will do to save his son. The film itself begins when Marlin's family is attacked by a barracuda that leaves only him and one small egg that would later become Nemo as the only survivors. However, surviving the incident leaves Nemo with a damaged fin, or at least that is what Marlin believes. In reality, Marlin's survivor's guilt imagines that one of the eggs miraculously managed to survive the gruesome attack. In a way, Nemo's small fin seems endearing, until he realizes Nemo and his disability are physical manifestations of Marlin's insecurities and trauma.
And then we go out and back in. And then one more time, out and back in. And sometimes it's...
Marlin was very proud to be raising a large family with the love of his life in what is considered a good neighborhood. So it understandably traumatized him when his entire family was slaughtered in an attack he was incapable of stopping. Before the attack, Marlin was a cheery and positive father who was excited for the opportunities this incredible new neighborhood would provide for him and his growing family. However, during the attack, Marlin is knocked unconscious and awakes to a disturbing scene. Neither his children nor his wife have survived the attack. A distraught Marlin is so shaken by the thought of being unable to protect his family that he imagines that one egg manages to survive the attack. Everything that follows from this point on becomes a personal journey for Marlin as he processes the 5 stages of grief from this tragic accident. Along the way, he meets a cast of characters who help him shed his grief and his guilt over the death of his wife and children. By the end of the movie, Marlin has transformed from a grieving and paranoid father into a happier, serene father who accepts life for all of its risks and understands what happened is not his fault. I know what you're gonna say. What about all those interactions between Nemo and the other characters? Throughout the film, we see Nemo interact with other fish and create relationships with them as he goes.
Well, hello, Nemo. Who's this?
Exchange student. I'm from the EAC.
These interactions are just an extension of Marlin's delusion of his imaginary son. It is possible that he conjured up the interactions in his head to make Nemo seem more real. Or maybe those around him played along with the delusion out of concern for Marlin as he struggled in the wake of the murder of his family. This part of the film relies on an understanding of the existence of an unreliable narrator, much like the main character in the movie Fight Club. Obviously, very different movies, but the impression left is the same. As viewers, we have to understand that we are seeing the world from Marlin's perspective, and therefore, not everything is as it seems. To understand how Marlin's journey represents the 5 stages of grief, it's important to understand what those stages are. The stages often occur in the order of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. In Finding Nemo, the stages do not necessarily happen in that order, but every element of these stages is explored as Marlin goes on his journey.
Nemo! Nemo!
Marlin conjuring up the image of Nemo is the first stage, denial. He is unable to accept that his son is really gone, and out of desperation, creates an illusion for himself that there was at least one survivor he was able to save to make the pain more bearable. The second stage, anger, appears most often as Marlin's paranoia and fierce protectiveness of his son. He is so caught up in his terror of any form of potential danger, he often snaps at other characters who dismiss his anxiety and fear, even as they try to help him navigate the ocean in search of his imaginary son. He lashes out at everyone, from Mr. Ray the Stingray, who takes Nemo to what Marlin considers a dangerous area on his first day of school, to Dory, his clueless sidekick who suffers from short-term memory loss as they make their way across the ocean. Marlin even snaps at Nemo himself on various occasions.
Now, any rushing fluids? Are you woozy?
No.
How many stripes do I have?
I'm fine.
Answer the stripe question.
This shows how irrational his anger and fear have become in the wake of the attack on his family. These feelings of fear, paranoia, and self-hatred that Marlin experiences are also evidence of the third stage of grief, bargaining. Guilt is a common companion to this stage, and this emotion is one of the most strongly expressed feelings we get from Marlin.
I promised him I'd never let anything happen to him.
He promises to himself that he will never let anything harm his only son to make up for the fact, in his mind, he failed to protect his wife and his other children. He clearly hates himself for this, and at one point, Nemo even says, "I hate you," to Marlin.
I hate you.
This moment is a physical expression of Marlin's feelings towards himself through his imagined son. The same guilt and self-hatred also adds weight to his fear for his son's safety. Since he could not keep his family alive in the safety of their own home, he does not trust that anywhere in the ocean is safe, and therefore refuses to take any unnecessary risks to protect himself and Nemo. The fourth stage, depression, is present throughout the entire film. Marlin is understandably depressed in the wake of his family being murdered in the first scene of the movie, and that sentiment is carried by Marlin throughout the film. The feeling of depression reaches its peak when Marlin sees what he thinks is a dead Nemo through the window of the dentist's office. Nemo is playing dead out of hopes that the terrifying, fish-killing girl will flush him down the toilet. But Marlin has no way of knowing this and assumes his beloved son to be dead. When he returns to the harbor after witnessing the death of his son, Marlin gives in to the hopelessness of his depression. Now he is faced with the true reality of his life, and he finally lets himself feel the despair he has been hiding from by conjuring up the image of a son that never existed. As we all know, Nemo escapes and is reunited with his father again. They go home with Marlin's new friend Dory and live happily together after their difficult journey. By now, Marlin has learned to let go of the fear and anxiety that has ruled his life ever since the death of his family. This moment is a representation of the last stage of grief, acceptance. He has learned to move on from his fear and trauma and goes on to live a much happier life. As for Nemo's adventures outside of his time with his father, they are being imagined in Marlin's mind. all of the important characters that Nemo interacts with can be viewed as metaphors for Marlin's life. Gil, who acts as a mentor figure to Nemo when they ended up in the tank together, is meant to take on the role of a parent.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if he's out there in the harbor waiting for you right now.
Yeah.
He is there to help Nemo perform a seemingly impossible task to save his life, much like how Marlin tried and failed to do during the attack on his family. Dory's optimism in the face of dark circumstances relieves Marlin of his sadness along the way, because she is symbolically similar to Marlin's past self, or who he was before the attack. Even Darla, the fish-killing girl who wants to take Nemo home as a pet, is a symbol for the barracuda that took everything from him.
She's gonna be here Friday to pick you up. You're her present. Oh, shh. It's our little secret.
When you look at Nemo's adventures through this lens, it's clear that his adventures are nothing more than another alternate reality Marlin creates to cope with the loss of his family. From this perspective, Finding Nemo becomes a much sadder movie, but it still maintains the sense of positivity you would expect from a children's movie. Although Marlin has lost everything, his personal journey through his grief to find acceptance of what has happened to him and his family brings him new friends and growth.
Mad at me. And maybe he wouldn't have done it if I hadn't been so tough on him. I don't know. Anyway, he swam out in the open water to this boat, and when he was out there, these divers...
Even though Nemo does not really exist, Marlin is no longer alone now that he has found new friends and the courage to face the outside world. Marlin's journey shows that it is possible to find happiness after a major loss, and there is still life to be lived once you get through the grieving process. In true Disney Pixar form, the writers have found a way to make a whimsical comedy about talking animals hold a deeper meaning for anyone who chooses to look for it. The movie's message of resilience and personal growth is timeless, and something we all must learn and experience for ourselves at some point in our lives. Like what Dory says, all you have to do is just keep swimming.
Swimming. What do? We swim.
Dory, no singing.
Take a look at this other recent clip by Director's Choice, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified with our latest videos.